Boys and girls. I realized I didn't clean up very well. Got another member stream going on tonight. Been a couple weeks since the last one. I've been deep in the fantasy world all day today, trying to catch up after a week of not really doing any content related stuff. Was really busy, as I mentioned previously, with a big church conference. I had some projects to grade. I had a lot of school stuff going on. So it's been a week, but I'm back and I'm kind of recalibrating a bit. Updated the rankings today. We'll talk about that a little bit. Getting prepped for Dynasty Cells video I'm putting together tomorrow. So there's a lot going on. I want to talk about Bo Nix. I put him on the thumbnail. Not sure where this conversation's going exactly, but we'll figure it out. Yellow Dog, what is up? Welcome into the stream. I saw you were here early. You were here, first person in the chat, first person watching the stream. I was looking at Bo Nix because I originally had him in my script as a sell. And now I'm just not sure. I don't know what to think anymore. Marty, what's up? Glad you updated the rankings, doing one last startup, I hope. I mean, don't limit yourself to just one, but I didn't make any massive changes in my opinion, but hopefully they'll serve you well. Freelster, what's up? Welcome in. Max, welcome into the stream. Glad there's a few more faces here. I don't want to have to just be talking with Yella all night, you know what I mean? Dan is back, locked in, ready to go. So here's the thing. I was looking at Bo. He is 27th on Fantasy Calc, which is really 26th because they still have rookie picks in there. 26th overall. And he's QB 11. And I previously, in the last rankings update, I had Nix sitting at 37th overall, QB 14. And I'm looking through what Nix did last year. And Stroud comes into it a little bit later because it was just sort of a comparison, right? Like why this guy with this guy? But just Nix in his own right. I'm just not entirely sure why we have to knock him significantly off of his rookie year. It feels like there's a lot of like prior opinion of him as a prospect that's holding a lot of weight here. Like, I know he was a 5-year prospect in college. He wasn't the best prospect. He, ended up going 12th overall in the draft. He was the 6th quarterback drafted last year. All that is true. The guy comes in and he throws 29 touchdowns, rushes for another 4. He has the second most quarterback scrambles in the NFL. I'm just not sure what I'm supposed to say. I was like, oh, well, he's actually not that good. Oh, okay. I mean, based on what? Like he had a very high check down rate. He wasn't, if he has a weakness, it was throwing in the intermediate areas of the field. He was second highest deep passer in terms of attempts. And he had a 93, I think I just posted, 94 PFF passing grade on deep passes. And then he checked down a lot. His weakness was in the intermediate areas of the field. Okay, what was he working with last year? Because as I understand it, Cortland Sutton was his only viable wide receiver. Marvin Mims is a gadget player that can occasionally get open deep. They did not have a tight end. They didn't have any good pass catching running backs. I don't know. It seems to me like adding Evan Ingram and maybe Pat Bryant helps a little bit with the intermediate area of the field, having more options there. But overall, this was not a bad quarterback last year, like by any stretch, especially if you split the season and you take away his first few games. Like from week 8 on last year, I went ahead and actually watched the BDGE video that we were talking about in the chat earlier today where he was ranking quarterbacks. from week 8 on, Bo Nix was the QB5 in points per game. He was scoring like 23 points per game. Even if you just take away his first 4 weeks of the season where he did struggle a bit, even if you look at that, which I think is a totally reasonable sample of games, like it's still most of the year that you're looking at. He played all 17. You take his last 13 games, he was like QB6, QB7. He was scoring over 20 points per game. He's all of his numbers look better. So I don't know. It's a real struggle for me because I do like to rely on the opinions of others, and like one analyst that I really do trust and I think is good at what he does is Jacob Sanderson. He has CJ Stroud significantly ahead of Bo Nix. He has Trevor Lawrence ahead of Bo Nix, and I just don't see it. I don't see why that should be the case. Austin, what's up, dude? Welcome into the stream. Edward, welcome in. I think you meant to say hooray. Close enough. I'll take it. Freelster says, from the way you're talking about Stroud and the Knicks in the chat, I assumed it was going to be Stroud moving down and not Knicks moving up. So it ended up being a little bit of both, because I think I was suppressing Knicks in the rankings for like vibes-based reasons that it's not really in line with my process. Like, we're looking at a quarterback here in Bo Nix who gave us the production last year, has all of the same infrastructure plus a few new weapons. Like, he keeps Sean Payton, he keeps the best pass blocking O-line in the league, he keeps Cortland Sutton, he gains RJ Harvey, much better pass catcher than the backs he had last year. He adds Evan Ingram, he adds Pat Bryant, whatever he might be, right? There's no downgrades in terms of situation. It's only positives being added to his situation where he was already good last year. He is obviously a long-term starter in the league. We're not talking about job security. He's in the second year of his rookie deal. He's going to play out at least 5 years with Denver, and he's obviously played well enough to guarantee that he's going to be a highly paid quarterback at some point. Again, second most deep attempts, second most scrambles. He's a rushing quarterback. He's not a Konami quarterback. Like, he didn't have a lot of designed runs. I think he had like 12 total designed runs. So he's not that guy. He's not going to be Lamar Jackson, but 50 scrambles is significant, like second most scrambles in the league. So that's a tendency thing. I don't think that's going to totally go away. I don't think that that's a total fluke. I think he's probably going to be an above average scrambling quarterback. That raises the floor. So Yella says still gross. Okay, still gross. I don't care about gross. I care about fantasy production. That's the thing. I genuinely think there's a little bit of a brand equity thing that's keeping Knicks suppressed, but it's weird because he's not suppressed in the consensus where you would think people would care about this brand equity thing, or that Knicks isn't, a sexy name. It's really more in the like ball knower, dynasty analyst ranking community where he seems to be a little bit lower. And I haven't thought of any good reasons why. I just can't think of any. Like, if I'm blanking on something, call me out. But he has a good OC. By the way, another important stat, I was looking at pass rates for offenses. The Broncos' neutral pass rate last year was 5th in the NFL. So you can say it was because they had bad running backs. Maybe. I don't really know if that's the case. Certainly Sean Payton called a very pass-heavy offense when he had Drew Brees. Bo Nix isn't Drew Brees, but he called a very pass-heavy offense last year. Again, 5th in the NFL in neutral script pass rate. So they are not afraid to throw the ball. They're not trying to hide Bo Nix. They're not trying to, just play good defense and run the ball and get out of there. Like, the game plan is built around Nix making these short passes, like the check down thing, right? He checked down a whole lot at Oregon, so I'm assuming it's largely a tendency thing for him to check down, but it could also be part of how the offense is designed, because Sean Payton has led the NFL, or nearly led the NFL, in running back targets almost every year that he's been calling an offense. So I think the Broncos offense is designed to be pretty high volume in terms of passing, to work with a lot of very short passes along with the occasional deep shots, right? You work in the short passing game, the play action opens up the deep passing game. I think that's what we're seeing with Knicks. And with so much continuity from one year to the next, compare that to the Texans. Yes, they bring in Jaden Higgins. Yes, they bring in Jalen Noel. They bring in Christian Kirk. I think all of that's going to help. At the same time, they had an awful awful offensive line last year. They got rid of Laramie Tunsil this offseason. I haven't kept up entirely with all transactions for the Texans, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that their offensive line is not a whole lot better than last year, given that they already put themselves in a hole moving Tunsil. And then you bring in this new OC, passing game coordinator for the Rams. That's promising, right? Comes from the McVay tree. That's great. But we don't know for sure what this guy is. Like, Arthur Smith once upon a time was from the McVay tree. Zach Taylor's from the McVay tree. Brian Callahan's from the McVay tree. Like, it's not just some guarantee that he's going to be a wonderkind offensive coordinator. So we have a lot more unknown with Stroud. You look at underdog ADP, you look at fantasy points projections, they have Nix ahead of Stroud for this season. If Nix is going to outscore Stroud this season, he's going to be consensus ranked higher than him sometime during the season. So I can't think of any good reasons to keep Stroud ahead of Nix. As it is right now, I have them back to back. I do still have Stroud over Nix. I haven't fully embraced it, but that's what I'm thinking about. Scotty, what is up, dude? Welcome in. I'm glad you can make it to a stream. Mad Eye says he's late. You're good, man. I've just been talking about Bo Nix for the last 12 minutes, having a bit of a crisis here. Not necessarily a crisis. I guess I'm just realizing I can make my own decisions here with these things, and I don't have to defer just entirely to people that I think are generally smarter than me, because I think this is how it has to be honest with you. So the one annoying part of this is I'm not entirely sure. I can't keep Bo Nix as a sell now in the video. Maybe I'll pivot to making Stroud a sell, to be honest with you, because I actually have moved him down a little bit since we started this conversation. He's 22nd overall, really 21st overall in Fantasy Cal, QB 8. I have him ranked QB 11, about 7 or 8 spots below that. I feel like that's a big enough difference to potentially make him a sell. I don't know. Mad Eye says, as a Cowboys fan fed up with Jerry Jones, I keep trying to pivot to being a Texans fan. Hope they're a little bit more exciting on offense this year. I mean, they should be a little bit more exciting. Okay, Austin, I can knock this one right out of the park for you. Why is Mahomes over Nix then? He's much older. Okay, so I can't have you comparing. You're showing your age here, buddy. I cannot have you comparing CJ Stroud to Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes from 2018 to 2022 scored 26.7 points per game, QB1, 20.7 points per game, QB6, 25.4 points per game, QB2, 22 points per game, QB5, 25.1 points per game, QB2. We've gotten one good year from Stroud, and I put good in quotes. CJ Stroud scored 18.7 points per game as a rookie. That is at least 2 full points per game worse than the worst Mahomes season that I just listed there. So there's a big difference in terms of what he's proven as a passer, and I know you're mostly kidding or partially kidding or whatever, but I think we have enough proof of concept with Mahomes where we know he's the GOAT, and he if the Chiefs ever get wise and just fire Matt Nagy, or if, push comes to shove, the Chiefs defense isn't good, we know Mahomes is capable of just being that guy and putting up massive numbers. He also has way stronger, brand equity, way stronger priors on him in the market. AJ, he's backing off now. This should not be considered a serious comment. Okay. All right. Well, I took it as a serious comment partially. But anyway, I think it is obviously understandable why there's a difference between the two. In fact, Mahomes has actually scored 18.4 points per game the last 2 years, which we consider this massive disappointment. It's basically the same that we got from Stroud in his rookie year, except Stroud followed up that impressive rookie year with 13.7 points per game last year. And the thing what I keep thinking about this, right, is you can go ahead and say, it's not on him, it's on the situation. The situation didn't really get that much better, right? He had Diggs for almost half the year. He had Tank Dell for almost all of the year last year. I know he played some games without Nico, but the offensive line is still really bad. We still don't know if they have a good play caller. So it's maybe hypothetically, somewhere down the line, if he gets some kind of Mike McDaniel type of coach, yes, we could see Stroud unlock something. He's 23.6 years old, so he's like a year and a half younger than Nix. That doesn't make any difference to me. I don't know. I think I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to be okay with it. And if I end up being wrong, if Bo Nix shows this massive regression this year, so be it. I just struggle to see why Stroud right now should be valued higher. Helix, if we're not live, I got a big problem because I've been talking to ghosts for about 20 minutes, but I think we're live. And then Yellow says, how impactful is this for Mahomes? Is what? How impactful is what for Mahomes? Nothing I'm talking about has anything to do with Mahomes. What I know about Mahomes is that he has Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy probably both healthy for week 1, which is pretty huge for him. He also still has Matt Nagy as his offensive coordinator, and he still has a really good defense. So, you know, I'm hard-pressed to project Mahomes to score as a top 5 fantasy quarterback once again, but he remains where he is in the rankings because he's Mahomes. And he has to put up at least one more mediocre fantasy season before I'm willing to fully just put him in the Justin Herbert tier and be done with it. But he's got to do it at least one more time. All right. So all of that being said, I now have to rewrite part of the video, which is kind of annoying me. But anyway, whatever. Okay, yes. Lowest average target depth in the NFL during the 2023 and 2024 seasons, Patrick Mahomes. So this is a thing about, so like if you want to point to Nix as being this kind of gross check down merchant, we have to acknowledge that Mahomes is also that. He has also become that as a quarterback, and it's a crime. I don't think the offense should be called that way. Like, he obviously has a ton of ability to do other stuff than this, but this is what they're doing, and it's mostly worked. So, you know, same thing in Denver. It's mostly worked. So that's where I'm at. I'm gonna leave good old Bo Nix there. Also led the league, highest ratio of fantasy points per game to letters in his name of any quarterback, right? If you think of it that way, only 5 letters in his name. So each letter, you've got a high ratio of points to letters. I don't know if that means anything. I haven't put that in my model yet, but there you go. All right, so let's look at some of the other things that were talked about here, and also I'll pull up the rankings, just some of the rankings that I did end up changing along with Bo Nix and CJ Stroud. Let's talk about Barkley and AJ Brown too, that are in this tier. Oh, we've got a question from Mad Eye, so I could pivot to that real quick. I know this is off topic from quarterback talk, but can you expand a little more on what you would recommend about buying veteran running backs now versus in season? So I was actually just listening to Dynasty Points, which I like to keep up with. It's a pretty good Dynasty show. And I was hit with something that Jacob was saying early on in the show. It was probably like, I don't know, 12, 13 minutes into the show. And they were talking about buying running backs. And I think he made a really good point that I want to try to be more mindful of when it comes to like recommending trades, and also when it comes to ranking running backs, which is that we know running back is it's a volatile position where you are pretty much always depreciating in value. Other than very rare exceptions, you know, rookies especially, and then very few other running backs outside of rookies are truly appreciating in value. For the most part, running backs are quickly hitting a peak, and then they are gradually, or sometimes not so gradually, falling from that peak. We've seen some exceptions, guys like Saquon Barkley, you know, having a resurgence, gaining significant value. Christian McCaffrey has gained value since his injury, but he is still well behind where he was being valued last offseason at this time. So if you think of it as in terms of like from one offseason to the next, you're pretty much only seeing depreciation from non-rookie running backs across the board. So when you think about acquiring running backs, one thing is you don't want to just be stockpiling them, right? You don't want to have a bunch of running backs on your team. You might think, I need depth. I need to have depth that I can use throughout the season. Well, early in the season is the time of the year that you need the least depth because everyone's healthy and there are no bye weeks, right? So you don't want to just have a bunch of depth running backs that are all depreciating in value, that also all have the risk of getting nuked, getting injured before you even need them. So the idea, I think the best way to approach running back outside of like the elites of the elites that you might consider building blocks of your team is you just want to get what you need from them as efficiently as possible. So like I have teams where I literally have 2 starting running backs and I'm not really actively searching for another one. I'm not like, I need to go get another one just in case, because again, I don't want them just collecting dust on my bench. I will go out and find one when I need one. Now, if a great trade is offered to me, if someone's like, hey, I'll give you Tony Pollard for the 304. Okay, I'm going to take that deal and I'll have Tony Pollard because I think that's just a value in, right? But it's not something where I'm going out right now and I'm actively trying to trade for running backs at their fair market value, generally speaking. And that's something I need to be more mindful of because I think I've had some blind spots for players like Kenneth Walker, where I've just been higher on him than the market because I think he's good and I think, he has upside. At the same time, we've seen his price actually fall since the end of the season, right? And he's become more acquirable. And especially in a portfolio mindset, you should be mindful of like when you're making these purchases because you can probably get good deals on certain running backs in different leagues. The other thing is technically right now is like a cheaper time for running backs. Like in general, running backs are going to be more expensive when the season comes because that's when the points are coming. That's when people actually need the points. So they're thinking more about how to value their running backs. But at the same time, we also have more information because when you're buying a running back in season, you know that that running back is healthy and you know that they're actually scoring the points that you want them to score. You think about last year, if I was going to look at running backs last year, right? You could have bought Rachaad White. Rachaad White was going for like late first, early second type of value for most of the offseason last year. We get to the actual season, and by week 1, it's over for Rachaad White. So like, if you could have bought Rachaad White for like the 203 in July, that might have been considered a value win. And yet by the time the season rolls around, you have nothing. Whereas maybe you wait till the season comes and you end up trading like late first value for Chuba Hubbard. Okay, you paid more money for a running back. You also got a running back that actually scored 15.5 points per game the whole season. That ended up being a lot more worthwhile than buying Rachaad White at a quote unquote discount. So I think that's something I need to be more mindful of is like, yes, you can get a good deal now. You also don't know exactly what it is that you're getting because that player can get hurt. That player can have a different role than you expect. And the discount can end up being fraudulent. It can be a fake discount. So that being said, coming back to your question, like what would I recommend? I would recommend being open to acquiring running backs from your league mates if they are actively trying to sell or you think they might be really undervaluing those running backs. That being said, I'm not looking to add a bunch of them now thinking I'm going to be like the running back guy that I'm going to sell them to all my league mates or that I need a bunch to hoard for depth because we all know players are going to get hurt and whatever. Because you can go pick up running backs in season. Like most of the time, you can get a spot start. You trade a 3rd round pick or something. You trade some bench wide receiver. You can get spot starts at running back, or you can just go out and actually pay up for a running back you know is giving you that difference-making production in season. So that's where I'm going to leave that. I'm going to jump on to Marty's comment here. When is the earliest you take a running back in a startup? Since I've seen you take Bucky early last mock draft. I don't have a set time of where I'm willing to take a running back. It just has to do with whether the running back that I want to select is available at a price that I like. Typically, the market is a little bit higher than me on Bijan and Gibbs in startups. Like I've got them ranked like mid-second, 15th and 16th overall. So 203, 204. They're usually gone by like 112, 201. So I'm just not getting those guys most of the time. And I'm probably like steering away most of the time from taking a running back in the, I'm not taking a running back in the first round of a startup simply because I don't have them ranked there. As far as how I like to build a team, I typically like to go wide receiver in that second round as opposed to running back. But again, if I was sitting at the 205 and Bijan was there, Gibbs was there, I'll happily pull the trigger. I'm not afraid to do that. And then it's just, when is a running back my highest ranked guy? Like I took Genty in the second round of a couple startups this offseason. Technically I took the 101, but like that was always going to be Genty. I took Hampton in the third round of a 0.25 points per carry startup. I have Bucky ranked. I have Achane ranked in the 30s. I have Bucky ranked in the 30s. So that's where I'm willing to take those guys. I don't have a hard and fast rule. I'm just playing the board. And generally, people tend to be higher than me in startups on running backs. But if they're not, then I'll grab those guys. Yellow says, good with giving up Worthy plus Hampton plus a second for Neighbors plus a third. Yes, definitely. Definitely yes. If we want to run the numbers here, I do have the rankings pulled up. I've got Neighbors at like 2.75 base ones, roughly. I've got Hampton around 1.5. I've got Worthy at late first. So right there, that's 2.25. That's still a good half of a first less than Neighbors. So even if that second was early, it would still be a win. And you're also getting that third back. So I think that's an easy yes. Pull the trigger, go get Malik Neighbors. Love that one. Oh, also, I want to go back to the Bo Nix thing for a second, just so I can grieve that I made so many bad trades involving Bo Nix. Not even because I was like low on him. Like I wasn't low on him. I drafted him a decent bit. I just ended up getting really unlucky. I guess this one ended up being okay because I got the 104 out of it. And because Dalton Kincaid ended up being terrible. But here's one trade. I traded Jerry Jeudy, Dalton Kincaid. Wait, what was the deal here? No, I'm sorry. Dalton Kincaid ended up being bad. I got Dalton Kincaid. I traded Mark Andrews, Travis Etienne, and Bo Nix for Jerry Jeudy, Dalton Kincaid, and a 2025 first. Now, the first ended up being 104. So that ended up being an asset that I value ahead of Nix. And then I guess I got Jeudy and Kincaid, and then I ended up flipping Kincaid later. Jeudy over Andrews, Kincaid and Etienne, kind of a wash. Okay, so I guess that trade wasn't too bad. That one was actually fine because I do have the 104, and I ended up making a move to get Ashton Genty from that point. So that one was fine. The one that I actually made that was awful, thankfully my lowest buy-in league, was, I believe, Knicks straight up for Etienne and Geno Smith. Yes, I did. I did do this in November. I traded Geno Smith, or I traded Bo Nix for Geno Smith and Travis Etienne. Couldn't tell you why. I wish I knew. I wish I could tell you why I did that, but I do not know. And then let me see if I can find the other one. Oh yeah, here it is. That one was easily the worst. And then this one was just, I traded Knicks and 2 seconds for Justin Herbert. Now, one of those seconds, I believe, well, it was a 2025 and a 2026 second. The 2025 second, I think, ended up being the 206. So potentially like, I don't know, Jaden Higgins or something, along with a 26 second with Bo Nix for Justin Herbert. So I guess that one's not too bad. I guess it was just one that was really brutal. But I would probably take back the Herbert trade as well if I could. I feel like I have them close enough where I would rather just have the extra picks. But anyway, we all make bad deals. Try to learn from them. Austin, I will indeed talk about what I was going to say with AJ Brown and Saquon. I apologize. I don't know if you're like in a rush tonight. I know you said that Friday was better for you, but I did move AJ Brown and Saquon down a little bit. I moved AJ down more than Saquon. I moved him from 28th in the rankings in the 1.5 to 2 base ones tier down into the 1.5 base ones tier with, I moved him under Marv. I moved him under JSN. I moved him under Achan. Here's the thing about AJ Brown. I love AJ Brown. One of my favorite players. I think he's one of the best wide receivers in the league. He's turning 28 in June 30th. He's turning 28 on June 30th. And we saw last year from AJ Brown that he suffered a bit from the Eagles having lower passing volume. They were 32nd in the league in pass attempts. He scored 16.7 points per game. But here's something you might not know about AJ Brown. He has never in his career scored over 18 points per game in a season. He's had 16.7, 17, 17.6. Then he had a down year in 2021, 17.7 in his sophomore year in 2020. He's never scored 18 points per game, and that's because he's never been in an offense that's thrown the ball a lot. It's just not happened for him. And I don't think it's going to happen for him in 2025 or, realistically, like at any point. So it's just very hard to like weigh the talent versus the realistic projection for him. But if he's not putting up, like, he's going to lose value between now and next season. It's just going to happen because he's going to be 29 next summer. He's going to lose value between now and next offseason. And so what do you need to get in between, right? I need to get significant difference-making production. When I look at JSN, he scored 14.9 points per game last year. So he scored less than 2 points per game less than AJ Brown. He is 4.5 years younger than AJ Brown. And DK Metcalf is gone. So it's like, what is the realistic projection gap between AJ Brown and JSN? Like, maybe AJ Brown bounces back a little bit. Maybe the Eagles can't run as much this year because of game script or something. Maybe we get AJ back up to that high 17 points per game. Maybe even hits 18. Maybe he hits 18 points per game. But what's JSN going to be at? 15 and a half, 16? Like, if he's going to score within 2 points per game of him and he's going to be 4.5 years younger, retain a lot more value, I think you have to prefer JSN by at least a little bit, or they need to be in the same tier. So that's the thing for me, is like, I do value him as he's a good contending piece. He's a good contending asset to have. And if you look at where he's valued, he's actually valued lower than where I have him. I have him at 33. He's actually valued at 35 in the fantasy calc ranking. So it's not that far off, but I am more in line with consensus now. And I don't feel like he's somebody I need to be ahead of the market on. I don't need to be aggressively pursuing AJ Brown. I think he has a purpose. Like, he's one of the few kind of high-end wide receivers older wide receivers you can go out and buy and expect to get, wide receiver one type of production. But again, I don't think top 5 type of season is really in the cards for him unless something goes really screwy, like Saquon gets hurt for a significant stretch of the year, or Devonta Smith gets hurt. Like, there's not a lot of there are outs, but there's not really a base case for him putting up those numbers in a low volume offense. So that's why I've moved him down a bit. As a contender, are you still considering moving him for someone with a similar range of outcomes or expectations? I mean, I don't know what that means exactly. Like, who is a player with a similar range of outcomes and expectations, I guess, would be the question. Because I think he's kind of a singular asset in the sense that, like, you look down the board at wide receivers, all of the wide receivers around him, JSN, Marv, Garrett Wilson, Rashee Rice, they're all multiple years younger than him. It's not really till you get down to T. Higgins, who I think just turned 26. So really not even, he's a year and a half younger. Even T. Higgins a year and a half younger. I feel like that's how far down you have to go to find another wide receiver that is similar to him. The reason I like AJ Brown more is that he has a much higher ceiling outcome where he demands targets at a much higher rate. He's more efficient per target. He's shown us a higher ceiling. Like, he he is definitively a better wide receiver than T. Higgins. So I still see them very differently, but I don't know what other wide receivers are really like AJ Brown, because you look at the other guys that are kind of his age, that are kind of in his draft classes. You're talking about DK Metcalf, you're talking about DJ Moore. I think those guys are obviously considerably worse bets than him to score points in 2025. Yellow says, I can't imagine anyone is giving up those guys for AJ Brown. I mean, if you look at where he is on Fantasy Calc, like JSN is 35, AJ Brown's 38. That's close. You know, Garrett Wilson's actually ahead of JSN on Fantasy Calc, which surprises me a lot. He's ahead of Garrett Wilson's also ahead of AJ Brown. So you have options if you're trying to get younger. I think you have options, but realistically, I mean, if you're competing this year, you can keep AJ Brown. Like, that's fine. You don't have to sell him. You don't have to go out and sell him and try to get something for him now. Like, he's not going anywhere. And if you're not competing, I think you just try to sell him for picks. I don't think you need to like down tier to a similar wide receiver, or you just go way down and you go get like a Emeka Egbuka in a first or something. Like, I think there's a lot of ways to play it. Now, I will say AJ Brown is actually still ahead of Tet McMillan on Fantasy Calc, which is shocking to me. McMillan's 44th overall. I think that's crazy low. That would certainly be something I'd look at. But moving him down is certainly not, it's not panic. It's not that I'm worried about him. It's not that I'm actively trying to sell him. It's more just that I'm trying to dial in like current production versus value insulation. And I just think that I had the math wrong on that a little bit. And then with Barkley, this is a bit of a spoiler for the video tomorrow. I'm going to have Barkley listed as a sell in the video tomorrow because his value is just crazy. Like, you look at Fantasy Calc, he's sitting at 21st overall, RB4. He is ahead of Stroud, ahead of May, ahead of London, Nico, Herbert. It's too much. It's too much. I don't care what he did last year. He's a 28-year-old running back who doesn't even really catch passes. 9.6% target share on the lowest volume offense in the league last year. It doesn't make any sense. People are buying in way too much to these big plays. And it's very risky, I think. Now, I still have Barkley ranked high. I mean, I have him RB6. I have him as a top 3 round startup pick. That's very, very high for a running back. But it's not where the market's at with him. So I am going to be talking about why I'm a little bit lower than the market on Barkley, why I'd be moving off of him. His startup ADP over the last month is 208, which is exactly in line with his Fantasy Calc ranking. So I think that that's pretty accurate. So yeah, I just moved him down a little bit as well. I realized, is he going to score a lot of points this year? Yeah, but he also has downside risk. He's had injuries in the past. And I think while I do think Marv and JSN have their own set of risks, I think they're just more insulated assets. And realistically, like, I just want to be more conservative in general with the running back position because of what I said earlier about how you kind of just want to go out and get running backs as you need them to fill the holes you need. When you have surplus value, maybe you pay up for the ones that are more fun. But overall, it's like, you know that they're the worst store of value that exists. And so you don't really want to be, putting a lot of eggs in that basket. And if I'm looking at how my rankings are, right, in a vacuum, if I'm looking at how my rankings are in a vacuum, I don't want to be putting myself or you guys in a position where you constantly think running backs are the best assets to go after. And then you end up with a ton of running backs, because the truth is they have a lot of downside. And I can't just be heavily weighting everything to what does the next season projection look like when I'm comparing to a wide receiver who's just going to have a lot more stability year to year because they have longer career shelf lives. They have more wild swings in terms of their situations than running backs typically do. So I want to take a little bit more of a conservative approach there, like I said, especially with older guys like Barkley. So I think that makes sense. I think it's coherent. I did also add a 1.25 base ones tier to the rankings. It was basically just a way of splitting that big tier above base one into two sections, just to get an idea of like, rather than it being just a pure linear progression, giving you kind of a midpoint for me in terms of value. And you might, if you look at the rankings, you'll see that that falls towards the bottom of that. So I have kind of like this little tiny tier of Garrett Wilson, Cam Ward, Brock Purdy, Trevion Henderson that I view as being, you know, in that 1.25 type of value. And then everybody above that I would say is higher than that. So if that's helpful at all, just, you know, more specificity I feel like is always good. Yella says, some home leagues way overvalue these old good running backs like Saquon, Henry, Kamara, etc. It ends up being difficult to add running backs, even like Montgomery, as needed. Yeah, so you can, you know, you can adjust to home league type of vibes at, you know, you can adjust to your own league tendencies from the actual rankings. And then maybe you say, okay, well, I'm going to be more hesitant to trade a Saquon Barkley in this league. And if I am going to trade him, I need to make sure I'm getting value that's in line with that league. And that's a totally reasonable thing to do. I certainly do that in some leagues. I have, you know, mental adjustments I'm making. What you can try to do in those leagues is if all of the running backs are going to get priced up, you might as well just go for the best ones and say like, okay, how do I, if I have to overpay for a running back anyway, let me go see if I can overpay for Bijan Robinson. Let me see if I can overpay for Ashton Genty. What you also need to do is really be working all the different managers to figure out, is there anybody that isn't like this? Is there anybody that is willing to deal running backs at a reasonable price? Or are there running backs that just don't have the brand equity, right? Like, is it just, well, you know, everybody in this league hates Chuba Hubbard. You know, everybody in this league thinks RJ Harvey is bad. You go out and you get that. That's the guy you go for. And you just can't be picky about it. You can be picky about the price rather than being picky about which running back you're getting. I think that's what you have to do, is just be more willing to take on different guys. I remember I was in a league that was sort of like this. It was a half PPR league, and I realized I had built a way too wide receiver heavy team to compete in a half PPR league. And I was like, I need to go out and get a running back. And I ended up trading my first for Devon Achane before his big breakout. It was like after his rookie year. And I traded my first for him. I was like, I don't feel great about this, but I know what the league environment is like. I had already gone to the Bijan manager, got shut down. Gibbs manager said no. I went down the board, like Breece Hall. I went to every running back that I had ranked ahead of Achane, and nobody would even talk to me. I was like, I want to buy a running back that has upside to potentially score like a, you know, an RB1. And so I landed on Achane. I went and made that purchase, and obviously it worked out. But you need to be creative. You got to be flexible to the league and how people are acting in that league. Another good thing you should be doing in those leagues is going out and buying picks, because in the mind of a manager, that pick is not a running back yet. It's just a pick. But if you go out and buy picks, once you have those picks, you can then obviously just draft a running back. You can also maneuver within the draft board to get to where the running backs are. So like in that same league, I actually bought the 101 this offseason, which I found was way easier than trying to negotiate with the Bijan or the Gibbs manager. And you can buy mid or late round picks and just stack up backup running backs, day 3 running backs. Some of those guys are going to hit too. Maybe you land on a Bucky Irving type of guy or a Kyron Williams type. So I think there's a lot of ways around stubborn league mates when it comes to running back value. But certainly you don't have to maintain the exact same as my rankings in every league. Like, micro markets are different. Settings can be different. My rankings are based on start 3 wide receivers. If you only start 2 wide receivers, there's a little bit less scarcity there. That can also bring the values down just a touch. If it's half PPR, that makes a big difference too. So the rankings are a guide. You know, they're not gospel. They're not perfect. You can deviate from them. You won't hurt my feelings if you deviate from the rankings. But all that to say, that is how I'm feeling right now. Dan says, I had a league like that. 6 out of the first 7 picks were all running backs. RJ Harvey went above Tet and Ward. Yeah, I mean, that's really extreme. Like, I don't plan anything that's that crazy, but there you go. Those leagues exist, and you can, it's okay if you're quote unquote overpaying for a running back if it's within the context of that type of market. Marty says, what is your roster construction for Superflex, tight end premium, start 10, 26 rounds, 3 wide receivers, 3 flex? If we're talking about a startup draft here, I genuinely don't have I don't have a roster construction that I'm targeting. Like what I'm doing is I'm just trying to soak up value. So I'm trying to trade, into pockets of the draft where I think there's going to be better prices on players. And I'm just trying to take the best players there. There's a few things I'll do. Like I'm not going to ignore quarterbacks entirely because that's just very difficult to dig out of. And I'm typically going to break ties to wide receivers over running backs because, like I was just talking about, they hold value better. They're more of a universal thing that people want. They last longer, right? So there's more insulation there. But in general, if the room is leaving me a bunch of running backs and they're all great values, I'm just going to take them and I'll figure it out later. If it's a tight end premium league and there's multiple good tight end values, like I already have Bowers, but then Kittle is sitting there and he's by far my highest ranked guy, I'll take Kittle. I'm very willing to build like weird looking teams out of a startup and then just trade later. So I apologize if that's like not a great answer, but I do think it's the right way to do a startup as opposed to just trying to force exactly like I need a quarterback, then a wide receiver, then another wide receiver, then I'm going to get my tight end. Like even the best laid plans are going to get cast aside because every room is different. Every startup is different. Austin, I'm going to go back to your agenda right now and we're going to go through a couple of those things before we close it out for the night. Let's see. You said, first of all, Travis Hunter's range of outcomes is the first thing you asked. Where is he going in startups next year? What's the floor? What's the ceiling? That's a good question. Where is he going in startups? I mean, we can start with right now. Since April 24th, Travis Hunter is the 312 in startups. Wide receiver 15. I think his ceiling outcome is to be going. I mean, if we want to say absolute ceiling outcome, I think he could be going where CeeDee Lamb is going right now. I think he could be 201, 202. I don't think that's like a large portion of the range of outcomes, but I think it's in the range of outcomes. As far as like, if Hunter comes out and has a good rookie year, like he does what we hope he does, and he plays up to his pedigree, I definitely think he's a second round startup pick next year. I think what you'll see Saquon obviously fall out of it. And then you could see Hunter, you could see him jump Drake London. You could see him potentially jump a Justin Herbert. You could see maybe, fingers crossed, but you could see one of Bijan or Gibbs fall out if one of them like suffers an injury or has a down year, something like that. There's a few paths I can see for him jumping into that second round. And more importantly than where he's actually being drafted as far as his round, as far as his value, I think he can certainly make his way to the end of that, like, ahead of Nico in that type of range of like Nico, McBride, Puka, Brian Thomas type of range. Like that's totally possible. When it comes to the floor, it's really hard to say because I guess there is some world where he plays cornerback. I just don't think that's likely. It's so unlikely to me that it's not even something I'm really factoring in. But I think it's worth looking at. It's worth looking at where Rome Odunze is going, for example. 506, wide receiver 19. He had a pretty putrid rookie season. Like, was legitimately not usable at all in fantasy. Less than 10 points per game. Absolute garbage rookie year. He then gets a second round wide receiver and a first round tight end added to his offense. Still a fifth round pick. After, where he started, I think he was a third round startup pick last year, or maybe an early fourth. So I think if you see Hunter come out and really struggle with the draft capital he has, unless the team makes some kind of comment that he's like not going to play on offense anymore, I think fifth round is really the floor in my opinion, outside of like a devastating injury. And even then, I think after the injury recovery in that next offseason, he would start to creep back up. I really, really struggle to see how he's falling outside of the top 5 rounds of startups next year. Just as as a realistic range of outcomes. He would have to be so bad. And I just don't see how he can be worse than Roma Dunze was last year. So that's where I see it. I could be wrong, but I think he's a good investment for sure. Second question was, which rookies do you think have the best chance to gain a lot of value quickly, could go up a few tiers after only a few games, which could flop and lose a lot of value? So which have the chance? So I'll tell you one that I don't think has a chance to gain a ton of value would be RJ Harvey. He's kind of being drafted to be what he is because he's a 24-year-old running back. Even if he comes out and is productive right away, there's a very hard ceiling on what he can really accrue in terms of value. Someone that I think could gain a ton of value right away would be Cam Ward, first and foremost. We saw this with CJ Stroud. If he comes out and he throws 4 touchdowns week 1, boom, he is in a whole other world of quarterbacks. He's right there he's with Stroud, he's with Nix, he's jumping around in ADP. And if he was to keep something like that up for the season, he's going to jump Herbert, he's going to jump May. He's a first overall pick at quarterback. He's a blank slate, right? He's coming in with no prior, we don't know what he looks like in the NFL. If he just looks awesome right out of the gate, people are going to want to buy in on that. So I think he has a ton of value to gain. I don't necessarily think that's the most likely outcome for him to just light the world on fire. But if he did, it's really easy to see where that would go. And I guess I have to say McMillan because, again, his ADP just hasn't caught up to where it should be. Where he is sitting right now, 403, wide receiver 16 in startups, it's really easy to see him gaining a lot of value from there. I feel like his true value is more mid-third, where there's higher expectations, and he can't really jump multiple tiers from there because it's such a high rating. It's such a high value already. Looking at other rookies, Marty asked a question about Tootin, so I'll say Tootin certainly has the chance to be that guy just because he's valued so low. All he has to do is just if he can just become the starter, he is going to jump several tiers. That's a guarantee. And that's what makes him a little bit more exciting to me than a Jack Besh or a Kyle Williams, because those guys need to become clear starters on their offense, and then they have to actually be good. Tootin just has to get that job. If he can get that job, he's going to skyrocket. Marty says, are you worried about the fumbling issues or just minicamp? I mean, I'm worried about it in the sense that he already had a fumbling issue coming into the league, and that's something we should have all been aware of. I'm not moving him in my rankings because he had a fumble in minicamp. I don't care about that. One fumble in minicamp is not going to impact his outcome one way or the other. But it's something people should have been aware of. It's something I was aware of when I ranked him as aggressively as I did. The upside is just really tantalizing. So just have to understand it's a very high variance bet we're making with him, but the payoff is very high. Dan says, speaking of Tootin, traded Mike Evans for the 210 and a 27 third. I'm okay with it because it's a shallow league. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I think that's fair. Where do I have him ranked? I mean, I probably have them ranked pretty close. I've got Mike Evans at the end of the early 2 tier, and I have Tootin in the base 2 tier. They're 7 spots apart. You got that extra third on top. No issue for me. Personally, I think that's fine in a shallow league, especially. The upside is just undoubtedly higher from a value standpoint and from a production standpoint. So those are some guys I think could gain a lot. As far as rookies that could lose a lot, I mean, it's hard for rookies in general to just lose a lot of value right away. The market is going to be pretty forgiving. Let me think. I'm trying to think of some scenarios, because you look at most rookies, right? I mean, RJ Harvey would be one where if for some reason Audric Estime is getting 50% of the work, he's going to lose value because people are going to realize he has a shortened window. And if it's not going to happen now, when is it going to happen? That seems like, I guess, a scenario that could play out. But most of these rookies, you can think about their expectations. Like, it's baked in that they're going to have a slower start. Luther Burden is not expected to come in and be an impact rookie right away. Caleb Johnson is probably going to take a good amount of carries from week one, but even if he's not putting up a lot of points, again, that's going to be understood. Egbuka is not expected to contribute right away. It's really hard to really picture a lot of these guys losing value within the first few weeks of the season to any significant degree. I think what's going to happen is there are going to be some rookies that struggle, and then everybody's going to be out saying, go out and buy player X, go out and buy this rookie. He's struggling. You got to go get him before he breaks out. And nobody's actually going to deal that player. Right. So I just don't think it's going to happen. Austin says, think Leggett and Keon. Like, those guys didn't really lose significant value in the first few weeks of the year. That's the thing. Like, you look at where they're going even now. Like, Leggett was like the 206 in rookie drafts. And even now, where is he going now? I can't find him. Hold on. There's too many faces on this page. There he is. 1304, going next to Shedeur Sanders, going next to Jalen Knoll, next to Mason Taylor. So, I mean, after having a horrifically bad rookie season, Leggett went from being like the 206 in ADP to being drafted next to guys that go like 301, 302. Like, he didn't even drop that much for his whole rookie year, let alone the first few weeks. Keon's even worse. Keon was going like 202 in ADP, and he's currently going next to Jack Besh. He's going next to Cam Scadaba, or Scadaba's actually going a good bit higher than him. That's kind of crazy how much higher he's going. Scadaba's just crazy overpriced. But he's going next to like Jack Besh, who's in that mid to late second round range. He's going ahead of Tootin. Like, the market's been very kind to these rookies. Mitchell got buried for sure. But I remember saying to buy Mitchell early in the year because of his per route stuff was pretty good. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't think it's going to happen for most of these guys. I'm sure it'll happen where they'll just crash in an epically spectacular way. But perfect example, right? Jalen Polk. Jalen Polk was the 209, 210. I was able to trade him for a 27 second in like week 7, after he did absolutely nothing. So I don't know. I think these guys, people put a lot of hope in these rookies. And when you have 11 other league mates you can deal with, you typically have an out for like most of what you paid, which is why they're such good investments. Lee, what's up? You made it. We're just about wrapping up here, but you did make it, and you can obviously catch the rest of the replay. Just want to hit on the last couple things here. Rankings questions from Austin. Penix over Dak. We've done that one. I feel the same way still. I just think Penix has a lot more potential value upside. I think there are still some issues with the Cowboys situation. I think Dak has dealt with injuries. He doesn't run as much as he used to. That's going to bring down his floor ceiling combo a little bit. Is he most likely still a better quarterback than Penix? Yes. But the payoff if and when Penix is good, and he has a good supporting cast around him, is higher. So I really hardly care at all. Like, it's a total coin flip for me. I just have Penix one spot ahead, but that's where I am with it. Walker over Judkins. I did go ahead and make a change there. You said feels like Judkins should be over just because of market perception. To be clear, I try to separate the market perception from my rankings almost as much as possible. I try to rank as much like what I want in a vacuum as much as I can. I'm definitely not impervious to market influence, but I do try to do that. But I did move Kenneth Walker down because I think I was just being stubborn with him, when you actually consider like what are his floor and ceiling outcomes relative to other guys in this range, I think it made sense to be a little more bullish on him earlier in the offseason because his backfield was one of the least likely to get touched because of Walker and Charbonnet being there, whereas other guys like Chase Brown, Kyron Williams were maybe at more risk. And then obviously we didn't know Judkins' landing spot or whatever. But at this point, yeah, Judkins getting locked into that high draft capital, being so young on a rookie deal, I think it makes sense that he should be ranked ahead. And then I've got Taylor right behind Judkins. I've got McCaffrey actually as my RB12, and then Kenneth Walker, and then RJ Harvey. So that's where it sits now. Yella, I assure you, this is not an Eagles take. I've been very high on Dak throughout his career. I'm still high on Dak. I'm still ahead of the market on Dak. So I'm not a Dak hater by any stretch. Dak sits, where even is he? 62nd overall in the consensus rankings, QB 20 on Fantasy Calc. I have Dak 49th overall, also QB 20, but 49th overall. So he's actually higher in my rankings. And he's one spot behind Penix on Fantasy Calc. He's one spot behind Penix in my rankings. I'm totally fine with that. I don't think I'm being biased. I think it makes sense. The other one was Olave over Rome. That one's not close to me. I'd have to hear an argument for why Rome should be over Olave. Olave's been basically on a per out basis, like basically he's just been the same as Garrett Wilson their entire careers. And you can like arbitrarily kind of say, you know, Wilson looks better on the field or he's like better after the catch or whatever. But Olave's been better than him yards per out run wise. He's been pretty similar on a target basis. He was graded out really highly in PFF as a rookie. He was significantly better than Rome in each of his last 3 years than Rome was as a rookie. And he has like basically no target competition, whereas Rome has an infinite amount of target competition. So yeah, he has concussions. His career is not in jeopardy that I understand, that I've been heard from any reputable sources. So I'm just going to continue to buy into the better player who's not even 25 yet, as opposed to Rome, who like is a total, still pretty much a mystery box. So I'm going to go ahead and grab Olave over Rome. I think I moved Rome even further down today, just a couple spots. But, you know, I just don't, there's too much unknown there. And then we had Ward over Purdy. Yeah, Ward over Purdy is a pure value upside proposition. There's no world where Purdy comes out in the first few weeks of the season and just gains like a round and a half of startup value, whereas Ward can do that so easily. Like he doesn't even have to be that good to do it. So I know what Purdy is. You know, he's got his long-term contract with the Niners. He's got his Shanahan offense, right? He's going to be like a QB 10, QB 11, QB 12, like most seasons. And that's great. Ward has that mystery box upside where he could be better than that. And the thing is, as much as Purdy is a good version of that archetype, I can go out and get Dak for less. I can get Goff for less. I can go down and get Geno and get that for a couple of years. And it's not that different than what you're getting from Purdy. So I think he's very much a guy that you're drafting for like safety and floor and not necessarily ceiling. Ward, I think, offers you that floor of value, if not fantasy production, and he offers you a lot of upside. So I think I'm going to keep him ahead of Purdy. Again, not that big of a gap, but I do have a preference there. And then finally, the last one was, we might have to push this off to another day. I don't know if I have a good answer for this today, about players like not scoring enough points to matter. And are there players that you want to fade because they're not going to score enough points and they're still expensive? I think I need to come back to that a different day. But what I'll say is you can score below a certain points threshold and still matter more in Dynasty because of value insulation and needing to have players that like maintain buying power year over year. Whereas in redraft, it's just a different equation. Like when I was saying those players don't matter, in a 1 year context, a player scoring 14 points per game is not going to move the needle very much for your team. but there is value in a player that is just going to score 14 points per game in perpetuity. Like knowing you have that guy, that does have some value. So when you're talking about like I don't know, someone like a Zay Flowers or a Devonta Smith, where they don't necessarily offer you that super high scoring ceiling, they're still young players with long careers ahead of them, and there is value in knowing they can reliably fill that wide receiver 2 spot for you year in and year out. So there's a little bit of a difference there, but I do want to think about it more before I give like a really detailed answer on that one. So you can put a pin in that. And obviously, guys, I saw the conversations about the name. I do like something with playbook that's pretty appealing. Maybe I'll have to think on that. Think about the rebrand. It's one of the many things that I'll look at this summer. Really trying to up the branding, trying to up the pure potential experience this summer. I'm going to hop off here, guys, because I do want to make some changes to the video script. I'm going to film early tomorrow morning when I get back from the gym. Hopefully get that video up by the afternoon and then be back on the normal schedule, getting content out, at least one video a week, ideally multiple videos a week when I can. More live streams too for the public, and just more content in general. So I'm excited for the summer. Appreciate you guys stopping by and chatting with me tonight. Hope you had a good time. Hope you got some value out of it. And I will talk to you guys very soon.